The first light of day begins not with fanfare, but with silence. Beyond the thick stone walls of the abbey, the world stirs quietly. The blackness of night gives way, almost imperceptibly, to a pale hue of blue, and the stars retreat behind the soft veil of the approaching sun. There is no rush to this dawn. It unfolds gently, like ink bleeding across parchment, slow and steady. In a modest cell, tucked within the cloister's eastern wing, a monk opens his eyes. He does not stretch. He does not yawn. There is no clamor to greet the new day. Instead, he lies still for a moment longer, watching as the gray light seeps through the narrow slit of a window carved into the stone wall. The air is cool against his skin. The woolen blanket, rough but warm, clings to him as he rises without a word. This is Brother Anselm, a scribe, and today will be like many before it, a quiet unfolding of ink, prayer, and quiet intention. Brother Anselm swings his feet over the edge of his straw-filled mattress. The floor is cold beneath his bare feet, worn smooth by generations of brothers who have risen before him. He moves slowly, with reverence, not out of fatigue, but in rhythm with the day's sacred stillness. He washes with a basin of cold water, splashing it over his face, his neck, his hands. It shocks the skin, sharp but invigorating. A linen towel, stiff from frequent washing and air drying, pats him dry. His garments await him on a wooden peg, a simple woolen tunic, undyed and coarse, cinched at the waist with a braided cord. Upon his shoulders, he places a mantle, well worn, but clean. There are no mirrors here, no combs or ornamentation. The purpose of the day is not to admire oneself, but to prepare the mind and soul for the work ahead. Before parchment and ink, before illumination and marginalia, there is prayer. The monastery follows the rule of Saint Benedict, which prescribes 8 canonical hours for communal prayer. The first of these, matins, occurs well before dawn. But on this day, Brother Anselm rises not for matins, but for prime, the prayer that greets the rising sun. He joins his fellow brothers in the chapel, their footsteps muffled against the worn stone tiles. The chapel is dimly lit, its only illumination the flickering light of beeswax candles and the faint glow of morning beyond the stained glass windows. The monks chant in Latin. The cadence is slow, melodic, meditative. Gregorian tones ripple softly through the chapel. There are no instruments, no harmonies, only the rise and fall of voices trained to blend, to become one. Anselm's voice, like the others, is gentle, not commanding, but contemplative. He recites the Psalms not out of rote obligation, but as part of a long, sacred tradition. Words once spoken by desert fathers now echo in this quiet stone chamber. Time seems to lose meaning in these walls. Minutes dissolve. Morning drips in like ink from a fresh, dipped quill. When prayers are done, the monks retreat to the refectory for breakfast, though it bears little resemblance to what we now imagine the term to mean. There is no aroma of coffee, no eggs sizzling, no chatter across the table, only the steady creak of benches as the monks sit side by side, facing the stone walls. Their eyes remain lowered. Their mouths do not speak. Silence is observed during meals, not as a punishment, but as an act of discipline, a space for reflection and inward quietude. A brother, designated as the reader, stands at the far end of the hall and recites from the Rule or from the Lives of the Saints. His voice is soft, yet clear, carrying across the rows of bowed heads. The meal itself is modest, a crust of rye bread, perhaps softened with a splash of warmed milk, a portion of beans, or an apple from the cloister's garden. There is no abundance, but there is nourishment. Anselm eats slowly, each bite a measured ritual. He is not hurried. There is time enough for the day to unfold. Returning to the main building, Anselm moves through the silent stone corridors to the Scriptorium. The door is heavy, but not locked. There is no need for locks in a world ruled by vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. Inside, the scent of vellum and oak hangs in the air. Dust motes dance in shafts of pale morning light. The desks are simple, angled wooden surfaces designed to support the parchment as it is written. Each scribe has a space of their own, no more than a few feet wide, but entirely sufficient. At his station, Anselm arranges his tools with care. A penknife for trimming quills and scraping mistakes, a small cloth for blotting, an inkwell containing iron gall ink made from oak galls, iron salts, and wine, and his quill, carefully cut from a goose feather, trimmed and hardened for precision. Everything is deliberate. Everything is in order. He runs his hand over the smooth surface of the parchment. Animal skin, treated and stretched, transformed from hide into canvas. Each sheet represents hours of preparation. Each will be filled with the quiet trace of human thought. But not yet. First, a deep breath, a final prayer. Not with words, but with intention. The Scriptorium is not a place of chatter or haste. It is a chamber of quiet intensity, where time seems to stretch out like a scroll. The morning light that drifts through the lancet windows spills across rows of wooden desks, casting soft, golden rectangles upon the stone floor. Dust particles hover in this light, motionless at first, then dancing lazily, stirred by a robe brushing past or a gentle breath released in contemplation. This is where Brother Anselm spends most of his waking hours, not out of obligation, but as a form of devotion, a kind of prayer written not with voice, but with ink. The Scriptorium is a place of focus, not the sharp, nervous focus of urgency, but the long, mellow gaze of steady attention, the kind of focus that can only grow in silence. The Scriptorium is modest in size, a single long hall enclosed by thick stone walls. Its windows are placed high to catch the morning and afternoon light without letting in distractions. The glass is imperfect, wavy, colored in pale greens and soft yellows, filtering sunlight into a gentle glow. There is no fire, for flame is too dangerous among dried parchment and wooden furnishings. Instead, light is borrowed from the sun and in darker hours from carefully shielded candles. Each writing desk is angled slightly to ease the pressure on the scribe's wrist. The surfaces bear the light scratches and faded ink stains of decades of labor. Carved into the edge of Anselm's desk is a small mark, perhaps left by a scribe long past, or by Anselm himself during a moment of restless thought. Shelves line the walls. They are not crowded, but deliberate, holding precious texts, bound volumes, and loose quires of parchment. Some are copies, waiting to be bound. Others are models, exemplars of script that less experienced scribes reference as they learn. Each scribe's tools are arranged precisely. Quills rest in small wooden grooves. A sharp knife lies flat to trim or scrape errors. An inkhorn is secured in place, containing a deep, almost black ink tinged with faint purple. Speech is rare here. When words must be exchanged, they are whispered. Most communication is done through gesture, a nod, a raised brow, a small tilt of the inkwell to indicate it is time to refill. The silence is not oppressive. It is not the silence of fear or suppression. It is the silence of purpose, of shared intent. Each scribe, bent over his desk, immersed in his task, contributes to the quiet, like a voice contributes to harmony by knowing when not to speak. Brother Anselm moves like water. He sits slowly, settling his robe so it does not pull or bunch. He adjusts the height of his stool, a simple affair, worn and smooth. Then he places a fresh sheet of parchment on the sloped desk and steadies it with a wooden board. There is no rush. There never is. In the Scriptorium, time is the companion of perfection. Anselm selects his quill. He has many, each cut to different widths. Some are broad, meant for titles or ornamental capitals. Others are fine-tipped, suitable for dense text in columns. The one he chooses is somewhere in between, the workhorse quill, trimmed just that morning and hardened near the hearth to ensure it will not splinter. He dips the quill slowly into the ink, allowing the dark liquid to coat the tip. A practiced movement flicks the excess against the rim of the horn. Then he lifts the quill to a spare bit of parchment and draws a quick line, testing flow, gauging consistency. Satisfied, he positions the nib above the upper left corner of the parchment. His first stroke is downward, a single line, followed by a cross. The letter A, the beginning of a new page. Each letter that follows is born not only of ink and quill, but of memory and muscle. The style Anselm uses is a variant of Carolingian minuscule, rounded, legible, and stately. It requires discipline and symmetry. Each loop, each serif, must mirror the last. The rhythm of his writing is almost like breathing. Dip, stroke, lift, dip again. The motion is slow, fluid, and uninterrupted. It is not writing in the modern sense, not the free flow of thought to page. It is more akin to weaving, deliberate, structured, and slow. Time drifts in the Scriptorium like incense smoke, not in a straight line, but in spirals. The only sounds are the faint scratches of quill against parchment, the occasional shifting of robes, and the distant tolling of bells to mark the passing hours. No one looks at clocks. There are none. Time is known by sunbeams creeping along the wall, or by the ache that settles gradually into the shoulders and back. Occasionally, Anselm stretches, a small roll of the neck, a flex of the fingers, but he does not rise. His mind remains fixed. He is currently copying a passage from Augustine's Confessions. The Latin is familiar, its rhythm echoing the prayers of his youth. Yet he does not take it for granted. Each word is rendered with care, as though it has never been written before. Some pages are easier than others. Some demand marginal glosses, small notes penned in even smaller script beside the main text. These are sometimes added by Anselm, sometimes copied from previous editions. They are part of the manuscript's life, a conversation across centuries. Copying sacred and philosophical texts is not a passive act. It is a form of meditation. As Anselm writes, he reflects on the words. He absorbs their meaning through the shape of their letters. He internalizes their rhythm, their theology, their poetry. This mental presence is part of the work. A scribe does not simply reproduce. He transmits. He becomes a vessel through which meaning travels from one age to the next. Mistakes, though rare, do happen. A slip of the quill, a letter repeated or omitted. Anselm notices one, a duplicated word. He pauses, breathes. Then, quietly, he takes his knife and scrapes the surface of the parchment. Gently, gently. The skin peels just enough to erase the ink. He buffs it with chalk, smooths it with bone, and he writes again, as if the error never was. There is no shame in mistakes, only care in their correction. Some days the sun is generous. It lingers in the windows, warming the floor, illuminating the scribe's work with golden hues. Other days, it hides behind clouds, casting the Scriptorium in silver-gray gloom. On these days, candles are lit, but sparingly. Wax is precious, and flame is always a risk. The rhythm of the weather becomes part of the rhythm of the work. Rain tapping against the glass adds a softness to the silence. Wind that howls around the eaves becomes a kind of chant. Even snow, when it falls, dampens the world so completely that the silence grows thicker, like wool around the ears. There are no interruptions, no visitors, no external world demanding attention. Only the page, the pen, and the prayer of quiet labor. As the sun nears its peak, light begins to fade from the eastern windows. Anselm completes the final lines of the page, gently lifts the parchment, and lays it on a drying rack. Ink needs time to settle. Premature handling would smudge the work and spoil hours of effort. He closes his inkwell, carefully replaces his tools, and wipes the desk clean with a linen cloth. The actions are performed with the same reverence as morning prayers. The bell chimes again, deeper this time. It signals the hour of rest, the call to midday meal, and a momentary retreat from the silent sanctum of letters. Anselm stands, his knees creaking slightly. He stretches once more. Then, without looking back, he exits the Scriptorium, the door closing softly behind him. The room does not change. The dust continues to float. The silence, still whole, waits to receive him again. The art of writing for the medieval scribe is not merely mechanical. It is not simply the transfer of letters from one surface to another. It is a discipline of grace, a ritual a quiet weaving of thought and intention through every stroke of the quill. It is here, in this moment, when ink meets parchment, that history breathes, that memory is made visible, that silence takes form. Brother Anselm returns to his desk after the midday meal. The Scriptorium is just as he left it, tranquil, spare, and reverent. He settles into his stool, adjusts his robe, and breathes in deeply, grounding himself once again in the delicate rhythm of his task. The art of writing, for the medieval scribe, is not merely mechanical. It is not simply the transfer of letters from one surface to another. It is a discipline of grace, a ritual, a quiet weaving of thought and intention through every stroke of the quill. It is here, in this moment, when ink meets parchment, that history breathes, that memory is made visible, that silence takes form. Brother Anselm returns to his desk after the midday meal. The Scriptorium is just as he left it, tranquil, spare, and reverent. He settles into his stool, adjusts his robe, and breathes in deeply, grounding himself once again in the delicate rhythm of his task. Anselm's tools are few, yet sacred in their familiarity. The quill is his primary instrument. Most are made from goose feathers, though swan or crow may be used for smaller or more ornate scripts. Each quill is carefully chosen, cured, and cut to match the scribe's hand. The nib must be flexible enough to allow elegant curves, yet firm enough to hold its shape through hours of use. Before writing, Anselm examines his quill. He runs his fingers along the shaft, ensuring there are no splits or frays. The tip must be clean, precise. If necessary, he sharpens it with his penknife, sliding the blade across the nib in short, controlled strokes until it resembles a tiny chisel. Next is the ink, a dark iron gall mixture that stains the parchment a rich brown black. Made from oak galls, iron salts, and gum arabic, the ink must be mixed carefully. Too thin, and it runs. Too thick, and it clogs the nib. Anselm stirs it gently, checking the sheen in the morning light. It should reflect just a hint of purple. Beside him lies the parchment, made from animal skin, usually calf, goat, or sheep. The surface is smooth, taut, and slightly translucent. Sometimes it bears faint scars or veins, reminding the scribe of its origin. Each sheet is prepared by hand, scraped clean and stretched, then sanded with pumice and dusted with chalk to absorb the ink. Lastly, there are the guides, a waxed string for ruling straight lines, a bone stylus for indentation, and a small blotting cloth for removing excess ink. all are laid out with quiet care, like instruments before a performance. Before any writing begins, Anselm must prepare the page. He starts by marking margins, using a stylus and straight edge to trace faint grooves into the parchment. These invisible lines will guide the structure of the text. He then rules horizontal lines across the page, evenly spaced, often with 12 to 15 lines per column, depending on the manuscript's format. There is something deeply satisfying in this preparation. Each groove is like a breath, invisible but essential. They do not call attention to themselves. They simply hold the words that will follow, like a skeleton beneath skin. Only once the page is fully ruled does Anselm reach for his quill. The writing begins slowly. Each letter is formed with intentional grace. The ink flows evenly, held by the curve of the nib, released gently onto the page. There is no hurry. The script Anselm uses is a formal minuscule, compact, rounded, and highly legible. It favors balance over flourish, clarity over spectacle. The motions are small and measured. Downstrokes are firm. Curves are consistent. Ascenders and descenders are kept within the ruled lines, forming a steady rhythm across the page. There is beauty in this uniformity, a visual echo, letter after letter. Each word is not only a record of meaning, but a miniature work of art. Some letters require special attention. The G, with its double curve. The S, long and slender at the beginning of a word, compact at the end. The ligatures, combinations like CT or ST, are drawn together in elegant flourishes. Anselm dips his quill again, just enough to reload it. He is careful not to blot. A heavy hand would spread ink too fast. A light one would starve the line. Balance is everything. To watch a skilled scribe at work is to witness a kind of meditation. Even the most careful scribe is not immune to error. Sometimes a letter is duplicated. Sometimes a word is skipped. At other times, a drop of ink falls too soon, or the quill scratches a gouge into the skin of the parchment. When this happens, Anselm does not panic. He sets down his quill and retrieves his knife. With the blade held at a shallow angle, he gently scrapes the surface of the parchment. The ink lifts in tiny flakes. The blemish is removed. He buffs the area with chalk, smooths it with his stylus, and rewrites the correction. Careful now, but never tense. There are also abbreviations used to save space and avoid repetition. A horizontal line over a vowel might signify a missing N or M. A small 9 at the end of a word stands for us. These conventions are standard, and understood by readers of the time, a language of shorthand honed through tradition. To the modern eye, these pages may seem dense, but to Anselm, they are crystalline. He sees their order, their balance, their quiet beauty. Hours pass, and the page slowly fills. The bell for none tolls softly in the distance, the 9th hour of the day. Anselm pauses. He places a linen cloth gently over the sheet he is working on, protecting the ink from dust and the page from accidental touch. He stretches his fingers, rolls his shoulders. Then he sits again, refreshed. The work continues. Some passages are poetic, filled with flowing scripture or elegant phrasing. Others are dense theological treatises, logical, layered, and requiring careful transcription. Regardless of subject, the writing is always the same, reverent, steady, and exact. Anselm does not skip lines. He does not skim. Every character, even the humble punctuation marks, is granted full attention. Periods are often small dots or dashes. Commas curve gently. Colons float like symmetrical eyes. In some cases, the beginning of a section is marked with a red letter, written later with a different quill and a different ink. These rubrics will be added at the end, along with initial capitals and perhaps illuminations, depending on the purpose of the manuscript. Writing is not without cost. Hours hunched over a desk can strain the back and neck. The light flickers, forcing the eyes to squint. Fingers cramp, shoulders stiffen. The ink sometimes refuses to flow or bleeds unexpectedly. But these discomforts are accepted. They are the price of the craft, the price of preserving knowledge, of transmitting sacred truth. Anselm bears them gladly. He does not resent the ache in his wrist. He does not curse the curve in his spine. He understands the labor for what it is, a devotion, an offering, and in return, he receives something quiet and deep: peace. There is no distraction here, no clamor of voices, no worries of wealth or fame, only the gentle rhythm of the quill, the flow of Latin phrases, the subtle satisfaction of order wrought from silence. As the final line is drawn, Anselm inspects the page. He checks for alignment, for spacing, for clarity. He places a thin piece of parchment over the sheet, protecting it from the next. Then he lays the page on a drying shelf, where it will rest for hours before binding or illumination. Tomorrow, or the next day, he will return to it. He will add rubrications, decorate initials, and perhaps even gild the margins. But for now, he sets aside the tools. Another page begins, and with it, the quiet prayer of ink and intent. The middle of the day arrives not with urgency, but with rhythm. In the monastery, time is not measured by clocks or calendars, but by the rising and setting of the sun, the tolling of bells, and the ebb and flow of communal life. And just as the morning belongs to labor and prayer, the midday belongs to stillness. Brother Anselm pauses his writing. He blots the last word of the paragraph, gently places his linen cover across the page, and pushes back from the desk. The quill rests. The ink dries. The mind exhales. It is the hour of sext, the sixth canonical prayer of the day, and soon after, the midday meal. This is a time not just for sustenance, but for silence. Somewhere within the monastery's cloisters, a bell sounds. Its tone is low and round, not a clang, but a calm invitation. The echo lingers in the hallways like mist. One by one, the scribes rise from their desks. There is no hurry. Each movement is measured. Robes rustle softly. Wooden stools creak. Quills are laid down like sacred objects. The Scriptorium, alive just moments before with the sound of scratching ink, falls still once more. Brother Anselm walks with the others, single file, through the cloister arcade. The stone beneath their sandals is warm from the sun. Shadows from the arched colonnades pattern the floor in shifting shapes. The world outside the abbey walls may buzz with noise and trade, but here all is quiet. The refectory is the monastery's dining hall, a high-ceilinged room of limestone and oak. It is long and narrow, with a raised dais at one end for the reader. Wooden tables stretch the length of the hall, worn from years of quiet meals and prayerful hands. The scent of bread and broth mingles faintly with the cool air of stone. The monks enter and bow gently before taking their seats, side by side, facing the wall or center aisle, never each other. This is not a place for conversation or debate. Speech is forbidden during meals. The body may eat, but the soul listens. A bell rings again. The monks cross themselves, and then the meal begins. At the head of the hall, a single monk stands with a lectern. He is known as the reader for the week, and his duty is to recite sacred texts during meals. His voice is calm, even, and slow. Not theatrical, not embellished, simply present. Today, he reads from the sayings of the Desert Fathers. Short reflections, gentle stories, fragments of wisdom passed down through monastic tradition. Abba Poemen said, "Teach your mouth to say that which is in your heart." A brother asked Abba Antony, "What must I do to please God?" The old man replied, "Wherever you go, keep God in mind, and whatever you do, follow the example of the Holy Scriptures." The words float through the air like incense. They accompany the meal like a second form of nourishment, food not for the stomach, but for the spirit. The midday meal is simple and always the same. Brother Anselm receives a wooden bowl of lentil stew, warm and fragrant, with hints of garlic and garden herbs. Beside it is a thick crust of dark rye bread, chewy and dusted with flour. A cup of watered wine is placed nearby, more symbolic than indulgent. There is no meat. The rule of Saint Benedict prescribes a life of moderation. Food is fuel, not pleasure. Yet even in its modesty, the meal has a quiet dignity. It is prepared by the kitchen brothers with care, often using vegetables from the monastery garden: onions, carrots, leeks, beans. Anselm eats slowly. Each bite is deliberate. He does not glance about, nor fidget, nor rush. He keeps his eyes low, focused on the food or the words drifting from the reader's voice. He chews with intention, swallows with mindfulness. There is no shame in silence. In fact, there is comfort, a shared stillness. The spoon, made of carved horn or wood, makes only the gentlest sound against the bowl. Nothing here is loud. Nothing is urgent. When the meal concludes, the monks remain seated. They bow their heads in gratitude. The reader finishes the passage and closes the book with reverence. A final prayer is spoken, this time aloud in unison. "Blessed are you, Lord God, for feeding us with these gifts. May our service please you this day." The benches shift. The bowls are collected. The monks rise and file out just as they entered, one by one, heads bowed, hands folded in quiet reflection. Anselm returns to the cloister, stepping into the gentle sun. The body has been fed, the mind stilled. Now comes the hour of repose. Many of the brothers return to their duties, some to the library, some to the gardens, some to care for the sick. But for the scribes, who spend most of their waking hours in stillness, the hour after the midday meal is given to rest. Brother Anselm walks slowly through the cloister garden, a square of green enclosed by covered arcades. In the center, a stone well rises beneath a canopy of vines. Bees hum near the lavender. Butterflies flit lazily through the fennel and thyme. He does not walk with purpose. There is nowhere he must be. The rule allows for holy idleness, the kind that refreshes the soul. He listens to the wind, watches the sunlight on the leaves, breathes deeply. There is a bench beneath a fig tree. He sits. In his lap, a small prayer book. He does not read it immediately. Instead, he closes his eyes. The world grows soft. Some monks use this hour for contemplation, others for reading. Some, like Anselm, allow themselves a brief nap. He reclines gently, robe gathered beneath his head, and lets his thoughts dissolve. Not in sleep necessarily, but in a kind of drift. The brain, so focused during the morning, releases its grip. Ideas settle like dust. Memories pass like clouds. There are no dreams, only sensation. The warm weight of the sun, the smell of basil and earth, the coolness of stone beneath his sandals. Perhaps he dozes, perhaps not. It does not matter. The hour is a gift, a pause between breaths. When the bell sounds again, for none, the 9th hour, it is as soft as a whisper. Anselm opens his eyes. The garden is unchanged. Bees still hum. The world still moves at its slow and sacred pace. He stands, smooths his robe, closes the prayer book. There is no rush, but the Scriptorium awaits. The ink will call to him again. The parchment will lie ready. And he, newly fed, newly rested, will return. Not all writing in the Scriptorium is black ink and steady letters. For some scribes, and at certain times, the manuscript becomes more than a vessel for words. It becomes a canvas, a place where beauty, symbolism, and devotion take shape not through language, but through color and form. This is the work of the illuminator. And sometimes, as is the case with Brother Anselm, the writer and the artist are one. When the text is complete, the pages copied and corrected, the scribe turns gently to embellishment. The hand that once drew out the shape of letters now lifts a brush. The ink is put aside, and in its place come pigments, powdered and vibrant, made from stones and plants and earth. The manuscript will now be illuminated, not merely made legible, but made luminous. The word illumination does not only mean decoration. In Latin, illuminare means to light up or to enlighten. And that is precisely what these delicate images were meant to do. Cast a glow of meaning upon the page, turning ordinary words into sacred experience. Gold leaf shines where the soul must pay attention. Vines and flowers curl around verses, framing them in grace. The capital letters bloom into intricacies, inviting the eye to linger. To the modern viewer, these designs are beautiful. To the medieval mind, they were portals. Each illuminated letter or border was more than ornament. It was a sign of divine light on earth, a glimpse of the heavenly in the midst of the mundane. And so, Anselm approaches this stage of his work not with flair, but with reverence. There is no separate room for illumination. Instead, a small corner of the Scriptorium is set aside, where tools of the art lie in quiet readiness. A shelf holds small jars and boxes, pigments made from crushed minerals, lapis lazuli from distant lands, yielding deep blue, vermilion from powdered cinnabar, rich red, malachite, a green from oxidized copper. These are mixed with egg yolk or gum to form paint. Gold, the most precious of all, comes in the form of thin, whisper-light leaf. Each sheet is delicate as breath and must be handled with a fine brush or knife. When laid onto a prepared surface, it shimmers like fire. Not bright, but deep, like starlight caught on vellum. Anselm begins by sketching the planned design in lead stylus, light enough to be erased, firm enough to guide. He plans each capital letter, especially those at the start of books or chapters. These initials will be large, ornate, often covering several lines. Some will include flowers, others beasts. Some will show saints or scenes from Scripture compressed into miniature, and around them, the margins offer room for flourish. The gold comes first. Anselm applies a layer of gesso, a mixture of plaster, glue, and sugar, to the areas where gold will be laid. He shapes it with care, allowing it to rise in subtle relief. Once dry, the surface is slightly dampened with breath or a fine cloth. Then, using a brush and knife, he lifts the gold leaf and presses it gently to the gesso. It clings, it catches light, it glows. He presses it with a burnisher, often a smooth piece of agate or a polished tooth, to smooth and shine the surface. The result is like molten sunlight frozen in time. To Anselm, it is not merely pretty, it is sacred. The gold represents divinity. It is used sparingly to signify holiness, majesty, or revelation. Even the act of applying it feels like prayer. Once the gold is set, color begins. Anselm prepares his pigments carefully, grinding powders with drops of water, yolk, or honey, and testing the consistency on scraps of parchment. The brushes are fine, made from squirrel hair or carefully trimmed feathers. Each hue has meaning. Blue, costly and rare, is reserved for the virgins, robes, or skies of paradise. Red signals importance. Green, the color of growing things, marks new life. White, made from chalk or lead, suggests purity. Black, when painted rather than written, is the color of the abyss, or of serious meditation. The designs are intricate. A vine unspools from the base of a letter, winding up and around the margin. Small leaves, shaped like ivy or oak, curl outward. Flowers bloom in corners. Occasionally, a bird perches. A lion crouches. A fish leaps from a basin. These images do not distract. They invite. The colors do not shout. They whisper. They beckon the reader to look again, to slow down, to dwell. Not all images are sacred. In the margins of some manuscripts, amid the elegance and solemnity, lie playful surprises. A knight fighting a snail, a monkey reading a book, a nun chasing a wild goose, a man playing bagpipes atop a sheep. These curious illustrations are known as marginalia, spontaneous sketches, humorous creatures, or small commentaries that live in the white space around the text. Brother Anselm does not always draw them, but sometimes, on long days or late pages, he lets his hand wander. A rabbit appears behind a vine. A fox peers from a barrel. A tiny face watches from the curl of an S. Why do scribes add these? No one truly knows. Perhaps they are private jokes shared among the scribes. Perhaps they reflect lessons or cautions told through fable. Or perhaps they are simply expressions of human warmth, reminders that even in sacred spaces, the spirit sometimes laughs. These drawings do not disturb the sanctity of the manuscript. If anything, they enhance it. They make the text not just a book, but a life layered with reverence and wit, wisdom and wonder. As Anselm completes the last illuminated initial of the page, he sets his brush down and surveys the work. The colors are still damp. The gold glows faintly in the shifting light. The border is full, but not crowded. Each line is balanced, each image deliberate. He waits. The drying takes time, an hour, sometimes two. He takes this opportunity to return to the garden, to read, to pray, to simply sit. Later, he returns. The paint has set. The gilding shines. He places a thin piece of vellum between the pages to prevent smudging, then closes the folio. Another page, complete. Anselm does not sign his name. This is common. Most medieval scribes remain anonymous. Their work is not for fame. It is not for art's sake. It is an offering to God, to the Church, to the generations that will one day read these pages. Each manuscript is handmade, unique, and precious. It is not reproduced on a press. It cannot be copied in minutes. It takes weeks, months, even years to complete a single volume. And each illuminated detail is a testament to devotion. the slow joy of creation. Anselm believes, as many monks do, that to write a sacred text is to pray with the hands, and to illuminate it is to shine a small light upon that prayer. Centuries from now, long after Brother Anselm's name is forgotten, the manuscript may still remain. A scholar may turn its pages with gloved hands. A child may gaze upon the golden initials and wonder. A musician may see a marginalia beast playing an instrument and smile. And even if the words are no longer read, even if the language fades, the art will still speak. It will whisper of patience, of purpose, of a quiet man in a stone chamber who sat in the light of a narrow window, painting stars into the corners of sacred books. Evening arrives, not with a flourish, but with a whisper. The shadows lengthen along the stone floors of the Scriptorium. The golden light of day fades to soft gray, then deeper still. Outside, the birds grow quiet. A hush settles over the monastery, like a woolen blanket pulled gently over tired shoulders. Brother Anselm pauses in his work. The final words of the day have been written, the ink left to dry. He sits quietly at his desk, hands folded in his lap, watching the last slant of light retreat from the wall. He does not rush to rise. The moment is a familiar one, the quiet conclusion of another day of careful work and silent prayer. The day is closing, not in defeat, but in completion. Before leaving the Scriptorium, Anselm begins his final ritual, the careful tidying of his workspace. He lifts his inkwell and corks it, wiping its sides with a linen cloth. He checks his quills, inspecting the tips for fray, and returns them to their case. A penknife is wiped and folded into its sheath. The blotting cloth is neatly folded and set aside. The manuscript is gently wrapped in a covering of clean parchment and placed on a shelf to rest. These movements are not perfunctory. They are as deliberate as the writing itself. For the Scriptorium is more than a workshop. It is an altar of intention. To leave it in order is a gesture of reverence. He smooths the folds of his robe, runs a hand once across the wood of his desk, and stands. His stool creaks softly, echoing through the now quiet hall. He makes his way to the door, joining the silent procession of other monks who, too, are closing their day. The walk through the cloister arcade is one of the most peaceful moments of the day. The sun has dipped below the tree line, casting the courtyard in bluish tones. The garden is still. The shadows of arches curve across the paving stones like spilled ink. A soft breeze stirs the air, carrying the faint scent of rosemary and mint. Lanterns flicker to life along the covered walkway, their glow gentle and warm. Brother Anselm walks slowly. There is no need for haste. The bell has not yet rung for vespers, the evening prayer. He allows himself a few extra steps through the garden, a small ritual of reflection. The figs have ripened. A wren hops across a stone. The sky above is deepening from violet to navy. The first stars emerging like tiny golden initials in the great manuscript of the heavens. He pauses, takes a breath, then continues. The monks gather in the chapel. The stone walls are cool. Candles flicker in sconces and chandeliers. The pews are unadorned. The altar simple. The air filled with the faint aroma of beeswax and incense. Brother Anselm kneels. The bell tolls, slow, deliberate, resonant. The sound does not call with urgency, but with a kind of welcome, a gentle summoning to presence. Vespers begins. The chant is soft, lower than the morning's tones. The psalms are familiar, their words absorbed through repetition, yet never empty. The harmonies are unison, the tempo slow, each syllable unhurried. Deus in adiutorium meum intende, Domine ad adiuvandum me festina. God, come to my assistance. Lord, make haste to help me. The words rise into the vaults of the chapel, then fall like dew upon the assembled monks. For Anselm, Vespers is not the end of the day. It is its fulfillment, the breath that completes the rhythm, the silence between the notes. He closes his eyes as he chants, and in that stillness, he remembers the words he has copied, the gold he has laid, the small creatures he has drawn in the margins. All of it. Prayer. After Vespers, the community gathers once more for a light supper. Collation. It is even simpler than the midday meal. A slice of cheese, a few olives, a portion of stewed lentils or beans, perhaps a pear or apple, depending on the season. There is no wine now, only water. Once again, the monks sit in silence. Another passage is read aloud, often from the lives of the saints, or a reflection by Gregory or Bernard. The stories are calm, often filled with lessons about humility, patience, or perseverance. Anselm listens as he eats. The food is plain, but warming. The words, familiar. He chews slowly, allowing his body to wind down, his thoughts to settle. He is not full, but he is satisfied. The day is nearly done. The final prayer of the day is Compline. It is the softest of the 8 canonical hours. The lights in the chapel are dimmed. The chants are hushed. The words speak of rest, of safety, of letting go. In manus tuas, Domine, commendo spiritum meum. Into your hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit. Brother Anselm chants the lines with barely more than a whisper. It is a lullaby of faith, a closing of the eyes, not only in sleep, but in trust. The melodies are shorter. The silences between phrases are longer. The community breathes as one. There is no sermon, no instruction, only release. At the conclusion, the abbot walks quietly down the aisle and sprinkles the monks with holy water, a gesture of protection through the night. They bow and return to their cells. Anselm steps once more into the cloister. The stars are brighter now. The courtyard is hushed. Even the wind has calmed. He enters his cell, small, bare, familiar. The single candle casts long shadows against the wall. His bed is simple: a straw mattress, a woolen blanket, a wooden frame. He washes his face with cold water, removes his shoes, loosens his corded belt, folds his robe. No prayers are spoken aloud. The silence of the great silence, observed from Compline until morning, has begun. He kneels briefly beside the bed, crosses himself, then lies down. As his body settles, his mind gently turns over the pages of the day. The ink that flowed steady and true, the mistakes corrected with patience, the gold that caught the sun, the vines that curled in margins, the chants that echoed in the chapel, the simple meals, the quiet laughter of a rabbit drawn beside a verse. Nothing grand, nothing loud, only the quiet rhythm of devotion. He closes his eyes. The candle flickers once, then gutters out. Darkness, and so the day ends as it began, in silence. The Scriptorium lies empty now, but not abandoned. Its desks wait. The parchment rests. The quills dry. The ink still. But the work lives on. In the words written, the prayers whispered, the images drawn. Tomorrow it will begin again. Another page, another prayer, another quiet offering.